At my baby shower, my mother-in-law said, "You'll be a terrible mother, just like yours was." Everyone laughed. My sister whispered, "Do it." 48 hours later, she was removed from the family group chat. And I moved into a beachfront condo. "So, she really said that?" Noelle asked, eyes narrowed, half in disbelief, half ready to fight. "She did." Loud. And everyone laughed. What did Bram do? Nothing. Just kept smiling like she'd complimented my dress. There was a pause. A moment where I thought Noelle would just shake her head like usual. But instead, she leaned in and whispered, "Do it." That was the moment everything changed. The story didn't begin at the baby shower, though that was the breaking point. It began long before, years of tension carefully folded into family dinners, passive-aggressive remarks disguised as playful jabs, and my husband Bram's endless excuses for his mother, Blythe. He'd say she was old-fashioned, a little blunt, just trying to be funny. But funny doesn't leave bruises you can't see. When Bram and I met, I was in love with the idea of stability. My childhood was chaotic, my mom struggled with addiction, and I practically raised myself by the time I was 13. Bram was everything I thought I needed. Structured, calm, stable. His family, at first glance, looked like a Christmas card: coordinated outfits, game nights, backyard BBQs. But the cracks showed early. At our engagement party, Blythe joked that I was a little rough around the edges and maybe I'd polish up in time for the wedding. I laughed, nervously. Everyone else did too. Even Bram. When I brought it up later, he said, "You're too sensitive." That's just how she talks. I let it go. And I kept letting things go. At our wedding, she insisted on wearing ivory. Not off-white. Full ivory. Bram didn't see the problem. I let it go. When we moved into our first home in Charleston, she showed up unannounced every weekend, often criticizing how I folded towels, organized the pantry, or let myself go by gaining 5 pounds. I tried to set boundaries, but Bram would say, "She's just excited. This is her way of showing she cares." So I made myself smaller. Quieter. More agreeable. But everything came to a head when I got pregnant. Suddenly, Blythe ramped up. She gave unsolicited advice about how to carry, what to eat, when to sleep. She referred to the baby as her baby more than once. She even brought over baby name books and crossed out names she didn't like in my copy. Still, I tried to be gracious. I told myself she'd calm down once the baby was born. I didn't want to cause a wedge between Bram and his mother. I didn't want to be that wife. But I was crumbling. Then came the baby shower. We decided to host it at our place because it felt easier. I was nearly 30 weeks along, exhausted, and didn't want to drive anywhere or manage complicated logistics. Bram thought it'd be nice for his mom to co-host with one of his aunts. I agreed, again. The day arrived with pastel streamers, bowls of candy, and a tray of cupcakes shaped like little diapers. I put on a flowy blue dress and tried to smile through the fatigue and anxiety twisting in my gut. At first, it was standard baby shower fare, small talk, cooing over onesies, lots of unsolicited birth stories. Then Blythe handed me her gift. It was in a small white box. I smiled, thanked her, and opened it. Inside was a onesie. Pale yellow, with black block letters that read, "Hope this kid's mom turns out better than hers." The room went still for a moment. Then Blythe cackled. "Oh come on," she said, grinning wide. "You'll be a terrible mother, just like yours was." Everyone laughed. Hesitant at first, but then it grew. Like they were afraid not to. I felt like the air had been absorbed out of the room. I wanted to disappear. I looked at Bram. Nothing. Not even a glance in my direction. Just a tight-lipped smile as he stared at the floor. Then I felt Noelle's hand on my shoulder. She leaned down and whispered, "Do it." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a plan. It was a push. A green light. That night, Noelle didn't go back to her hotel. She stayed with me. Bram said he had to run back to the dealership to finish some end-of-month stuff. He was gone for hours. When he got home, I confronted him. I told him what Blythe said, how hurt I was, and how humiliated I felt. She didn't mean it like that, he said without even looking up from his phone. You didn't say anything. She was joking. You know she jokes. I went to bed cold that night. The kind of cold that isn't about temperature. The kind that grows from the middle of your chest and spreads until even your bones ache. Noelle made coffee the next morning while I sat at the kitchen table in silence. Then she opened her laptop. We're sending an email, she said. To who? Everyone. We spent hours crafting it. Every word careful. Every sentence factual. We told the truth. We included quotes. We attached a photo of the onesie. I ended it with, I will not allow my child to be born into a family where cruelty is excused as tradition. I'm setting a boundary now. I won't allow my mother-in-law near my child until she sincerely apologizes. If that's not acceptable to the rest of the family, I understand, and I'll remove myself accordingly. We hit send just after noon. 2 days later, we were both removed from the family group chat. Bram didn't say anything for 4 days. He slept on the couch. Then in the guest room. Then he just stopped coming home. I found out from a neighbor that he was staying with his cousin across town. It felt like abandonment, but at the same time, a relief. Noelle extended her stay. She found a short-term rental on Sullivan's Island. The condo was small but beautiful, with floor-to-ceiling windows and soft white furniture. She gave me the master bedroom. I moved in with a few bags and left everything else behind. Noelle joked that the ocean air would help me breathe again. I started to sleep again. Not the light, half-aware kind of sleep I'd been living on for the past several months, but the kind where your body fully sinks into the mattress and your breath slows and, for the first time in a long time, you wake up not exhausted. Noelle stocked the fridge with things she knew I liked. Peaches. Iced green tea. Yogurt with honey. She bought a few maternity lounge sets for me when I couldn't bring myself to return to the house to get my things. Meanwhile, Bram kept his silence. I knew he was reading the group chat. I knew his family had opinions, but no one reached out. Not one of them. That silence was louder than if they had screamed. One afternoon, about a week after the shower, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. When I checked it later, it was Blythe. Her voice was strained, like someone trying to cry but unsure how. She said she was shocked by my overreaction, that she meant it as a joke and she always knew I was a little too fragile. She said it wasn't nice to send an email attacking her character and that she'd never hurt her grandchild. But there was no apology. No acknowledgement of what she said or how it affected me. I saved the voicemail. Then I blocked the number. A few days later, a letter arrived at the condo, handwritten, folded neatly, no return address. It was from Bram. It was the kind of letter people write when they think they sound mature but really just want to avoid accountability. He talked about how hurt he was that I had publicly humiliated his family, how I had created drama during a time that was supposed to be about joy, and how he hoped we could put this behind us for the baby's sake. No mention of Blythe's behavior. No responsibility for his own silence. No acknowledgement of how broken things already were. I didn't write back. Noelle would occasionally scroll through Bram's cousin's social media and give me updates I never asked for. Bram had gone back to living like a bachelor. There were pictures of him at the dealership, holding champagne flutes with clients, smiling too wide, too forced. He's already rewriting the narrative, Noelle said one night while we sat on the balcony watching the waves crash. He'll say you were emotional. That you ran off. That you were impossible to please. I nodded. I'd already imagined the script. It was always easier to make the woman the villain in these stories. Still, I didn't chase him. I didn't beg. Instead, I began building a new routine. Every morning, I'd walk along the beach, slowly, carefully, with my hands on my belly. The sound of the ocean was better than any meditation app. Noelle would meet me at a little cafe down the block where we'd split a muffin and she'd order some strange smoothie that always turned out to be delicious. We talked about everything and nothing. She reminded me of who I used to be. The girl who once wanted to live near the coast and write a book and raise a child in peace. I started journaling again. At first just scattered thoughts, then longer entries. It became therapy. As my due date approached, I made the decision to stay at the condo permanently. I talked to a lawyer about separation. Noelle connected me with someone in downtown Charleston who specialized in family law. She reviewed everything, texts, the voicemail, Bram's letter. She told me I had a very clear case. Especially since Bram hadn't made any move to check on me or attend any prenatal appointments. He texted me once more before the baby came. Just a simple, "We need to talk." I ignored it. The birth itself was peaceful, almost eerily so. I opted for a midwife-led birthing center that sat quietly near the marshes. The staff were kind, gentle, patient. Noelle stayed with me the entire time. She held my hand through every contraction and never once left my side. When Isla was born, tiny, pink, with a full head of black hair, I felt something I hadn't in years, grounded. Everything slowed. The world narrowed to just me, her, and the sound of Noelle crying softly in the corner. I didn't call Bram. He didn't call me either. A few days later, I emailed him a simple update: Isla was born. 6 pounds, 3 ounces. Healthy. No other details. His response came 5 days later. Congrats. Can I see her? I forwarded it to my lawyer. At that point, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about anger. It was about protection. He'd shown me who he was, over and over again. The next phase was all logistics, quiet, clinical, necessary. My lawyer suggested supervised visitation if Bram truly wanted to be part of Isla's life. That wasn't a punishment, it was a boundary. He hadn't been there for appointments, hadn't called to check on either of us during the pregnancy, hadn't once acknowledged how deeply that baby shower moment had wounded me. I wasn't going to pretend he could just step into fatherhood because it was convenient now. Bram didn't respond to the lawyer's first letter. A week passed. Then 2. The next thing I heard was that he had asked his cousin to post pictures of him holding a baby doll at a dealership charity event, captioned, "Getting ready to be a girl dad." It stung. Not because I missed him, I didn't, but because it was such a public performance of something so private. Like fatherhood was a role he was rehearsing for on a stage, not a responsibility with real weight. Blythe, of course, doubled down in her own way. I started getting packages again, baby clothes, books, trinkets. They weren't addressed to me. They were addressed to baby Isla. Like I didn't exist. Like my daughter had been born into the Blythe family tree directly, bypassing me entirely. Each time, I marked return to sender and dropped them off without a second thought. Noelle, ever the watchdog, kept a distant eye on their digital lives. Every now and then, she'd show me a post or message someone from their circle had made. Pitying remarks. Passive comments about how sad it is when family can't get along. Blythe even made a public Facebook post once that simply said, "Some people love to play the victim. Guess it runs in their family." That post had 100 likes. I didn't flinch when I saw it. It's amazing what you can learn to ignore when your peace is louder than their noise. At home, things were quiet, but in the best way. Isla slept in a bassinet by my bed, and I'd watch her tiny chest rise and fall like the tide. Sometimes I cried, not from sadness, but from sheer overwhelm. That she was here. That she was mine. That I'd survived everything it took to get to her. Noelle moved into the condo next door when her lease was up. She hadn't planned on staying in Charleston long term, but she said the ocean helped her sleep too. She got a job at a local bookshop and started dating a guy who worked at the coastal nature preserve. They were quiet together, gentle. She told me she finally understood why I had once believed in stability so deeply. Turns out, she said, you just needed it from the right people. We made a life, slowly, one quiet morning at a time. One afternoon, I was sitting on the sand with Isla sleeping against my chest in her sling, when I got a message on an old email account I rarely used anymore. It was from Bram. The subject line read, "Just talk?" The message itself was only a few lines. I miss her. I miss you. I didn't handle things right. I know that now. Can we meet? Just the two of us. I want to understand. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the tab and walked back inside. I didn't respond. The truth was, I didn't think Bram wanted to understand. I think he wanted to repair a version of his life that no longer existed. A life where things were tidy and curated and where he didn't have to confront what his silence had cost. What it had really cost. Meanwhile, I was beginning to understand something I had never fully grasped before: leaving wasn't the hard part. Staying gone was. I thought the pain would fade fast, like ripping off a bandage. But it didn't. It lingered. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and think I heard someone at the door. Or I'd smell that lemony perfume Blythe used to wear and feel my stomach clench, like a memory I couldn't delete. But then Isla would stir. And I'd look at her and remember. This wasn't just about me anymore. Every choice I made was a blueprint she would one day follow. If I allowed cruelty, she might learn to tolerate it. If I accepted silence in place of respect, she might grow to do the same. And I couldn't live with that. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, the drama began to fade into the background noise of life. I wasn't thinking about Blythe or Bram every day anymore. I was thinking about nap schedules, pediatric appointments, and whether Isla's diaper rash was from her new wipes or the heat. The world had shrunk to something manageable, and that was a gift I didn't take for granted. But peace has a way of attracting disturbance. It started with a letter, not an email, not a phone call, but a thick, cream-colored envelope left in the mailbox, no stamp, no postmark. Someone had dropped it off by hand. Inside was a formal invitation to a family dinner. Not a holiday. Not a birthday. Just a generic dinner at Blythe's house to talk things through, if open to reconciliation. It was signed by Bram's Aunt Clarissa, likely chosen for her neutral status in the family. I held the paper for a long time before setting it down. Noelle saw it on the table later that evening. "You thinking of going?" I didn't answer right away. "I'm thinking of Isla," I said. "You don't owe them anything," she replied. "She's not missing anything without that circus." "You think I turned out poorly without a whole crowd of uncles and aunts telling me I needed to smile more?" I laughed, because she wasn't wrong. Still, something tugged at me. Not guilt. More like the ghost of an old version of myself who still wanted to be liked. Still wanted to be chosen. Still wondered what it would have been like to be part of a family that showed up, just once, the right way. I didn't go. But that didn't stop them from trying again. Over the next few weeks, I started getting more subtle pressure. Bram's cousin, the same one who posted those photos at the dealership, messaged me with a carefully worded, "Hey, we've been thinking about you and the baby, hope you're both okay." Another aunt sent a card, handmade, with a vague apology that said something like, "We all make mistakes, and we hope to start fresh when you're ready." It all felt curated. Like a PR campaign. I didn't respond to any of it. Until Bram finally showed up. He didn't come to the condo. That would have required some nerve. No, he showed up at the bookstore where Noelle worked. She texted me as soon as she saw him. "He's here. Wants to talk to me. Should I tell him to screw off?" My heart started racing. Not from fear. But because part of me hated that he'd put Noelle in that position. "Just listen," I texted back. "Tell me what he says." She called me that night. He said he's changed, she said. That he didn't realize how much damage he did. That therapy has helped. That he wants to co-parent and make things right. I didn't say anything. Lonnie, Noelle said gently, he sounded sincere. But I'm not saying that means anything. Just that, it might be time to listen. Or at least decide what you want to say if you ever do. I thought about it for days. I watched Isla chewing on her hands and her bouncer, drooling like a champ, gurgling her own little language at the seagulls she could see through the window. She had Bram's eyes. Sometimes it made me ache. Sometimes it made me angry. A week later, I agreed to a supervised meeting at the Family Mediation Center in Mount Pleasant. We sat in a beige room that smelled like Lysol and dusty carpet. A counselor named Rhonda facilitated. Bram looked nervous. Older somehow. His shirt was wrinkled, and there were deep lines under his eyes. He didn't speak for the first few minutes. Rhonda asked if we were ready. I nodded. Bram cleared his throat. I was a coward, he started. I let her treat you like nothing. And I stood by. Because I didn't want to fight with her. Because I thought it would blow over. And I was wrong. I sat still. I didn't know what it meant to be a father until I wasn't there for her birth. That destroyed me. And I know I can't just show up now and expect to be trusted. But I'm here. And I'll keep showing up if you'll let me. His voice cracked at the end. I believed that he was sincere in that moment. That didn't mean I was ready to forgive. Or forget. But I believed he was at least standing in a kind of truth. Still, I spoke carefully. I'm raising a daughter, I said. I want her to know what respect looks like. What strength looks like. I won't let her watch me accept anything less. He nodded. I don't want her around people who think cruelty is a joke. Or who stand by while someone else gets hurt. That includes you. That includes your mother. If you're serious about being in her life, there are boundaries. I get that, he said. I do. It wasn't a resolution. Not yet. It wasn't forgiveness either. But it was a beginning. Rhonda said we could revisit after 60 days. He could write to Isla. I could read the letters and decide what, if anything, to share. When I left that room, I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry. I was tired, but in the way you feel after cleaning something that's been dusty for years. Worn out, yes, but also lighter. That night, Noelle and I sat on the balcony with Isla asleep in my lap. The waves were loud, the wind steady. You okay? She asked. I think I will be, I said. The road ahead wasn't clear. But it was mine. The next 2 months felt like a test I didn't sign up for. Every day, I checked the mailbox and found another letter, each carefully written by Bram. He addressed them to Isla, like Rhonda suggested, but I read every one before deciding what to keep. The first few were clumsy. He wrote about wanting to see her smile, about learning how to change diapers from YouTube. He said he'd read books on parenting, therapy, emotional neglect. Some lines made me flinch, like when he described the guilt that kept him up at night. Others felt like a step forward. A man realizing what silence had cost him. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. The real change came with an email. Not from Bram. From Blythe. It was short. Direct. If it matters to you, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said what I said at the shower. I thought I was being clever, and I hurt you. That wasn't mother-in-law humor. It was cruelty. I own that now. I read it twice. 3 times. She didn't ask to see Isla. She didn't try to justify. She didn't make it about her. It shocked me more than anything Bram had done. Still, I didn't respond. Instead, I did something better. Noelle and I threw a party. A small one. Just a few neighbors, some friends from the bookstore, a couple of moms from the birthing class I'd attended before Isla came. We set it up right on the beach behind the condo, low tables, picnic blankets, fresh fruit, sandwiches, nothing fancy. It wasn't for Isla's birthday. It wasn't for me. It was a goodbye party. Because I'd sold the condo. I'd found a little house, just 2 miles up the coast. Still beachfront, but quieter, tucked behind some sea grass and painted the palest shade of green. It had a porch swing, a clawfoot tub, and a tiny spare room for Noelle when she needed a break from her boyfriend's loud video games. I hadn't told Bram. Not yet. At the party, while Isla was napping upstairs, I checked my phone and saw another email from Bram. My mom wants to apologize to you in person. She says she's been working on it in therapy. I told her not to push. Just passing it along. I typed a response I'd been thinking about for weeks. Appreciate the message. But an apology means nothing without action. If Blythe truly wants to make things right, she can start by donating to the local women's shelter in my mother's name. Then she can stop calling herself Isla's grandmother until she earns that role. I hit send. The next day, I got a forwarded donation receipt from Blythe. $10,000 to the Charleston Center for Women, made in honor of Mariah Lynn Beckett, my mother. There was no message attached. Just the receipt. I stared at it for a long time. It didn't erase the years of hurt. But it was something. Later that week, Bram requested another meeting. Not with a mediator, just me, at a public place. I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe near the water, one I liked for its cinnamon scones and dim lighting. He looked different. Softer. Less polished. I heard about the move, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Noelle? She and my cousin still follow each other, he said with a smirk. You okay with it? I'm okay with everything. He nodded, playing with the edge of his coffee cup. I was an idiot. You were a coward, I said, not unkindly. He winced. Fair. You let your mother humiliate me. You let it keep happening. Then you blamed me for the fallout. I know. And I'll never let my daughter grow up thinking that's normal. So if you're serious about being in her life, you'll follow my lead. You'll protect her even when it's uncomfortable. Especially then. He looked at me for a long time. I will, he said. I don't expect forgiveness. But I want to be better. For her. And for myself. I believed him. Not because he said the right words. But because this time, he wasn't hiding behind them. We agreed on a slow reintroduction. Supervised visits at first. Then maybe more, depending on how it went. Blythe wouldn't be involved, not until I said so. But the real ending, the part that felt like justice, like peace, wasn't about the apologies or the letters or the donated money. It was about Isla. She grew up knowing she was wanted. She grew up hearing stories about her grandma Mariah, the way she danced barefoot in the kitchen, the way she called every little bird sweetheart. She had a mother who showed her how to draw lines in the sand, and how to walk away when someone crosses them. One day, when Isla was 5, she came home from preschool and asked what the word respect meant. I told her it meant treating people like they matter, and not letting anyone treat you like you don't. She blinked up at me. Then nodded like it made perfect sense. And in that moment, it felt like the cycle had been broken. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was quiet. It was choosing peace over performance. It was building a new life with my daughter, one beach walk at a time, where the waves washed everything clean, and no one got to rewrite the past. Not even Bram. Not even Blythe. And that was more satisfying than any takedown could ever be.